This is part 2 of the Bridgeport Torq Cut 22. That's new to our shop. This is the back fans I ended with in part 1. And I'm looking inside the main control cabinet that's located on the back of the machine. Now, it's nicely laid out. And it's got some modern features that I really hadn't expected in here. It's got a lot of DIN rail mounted circuit breakers. Whereas some of the parts just are covered in fuses. All those little pieces right here, all of those are fuses. And they're everywhere in this machine. They did some nice layout work. This is the box that was added by the electricians at one time, and they did a nice job. They put standoffs on it so it's not blocking the fan. But after looking at this, it's totally useless, or unneeded, not useless, because in here is a disconnect fuse panel. So they could have ran that just directly to that, and I may do it because with my workbench right here, I don't have to get back here very often, but that's a head knocker. This machine is unique from most of the others I've researched in that I don't have to have a three-phase for it. Now over on the wall up there, that's a 20 horsepower RPC control panel, and I've got the motor out in the back. But I have 20 horsepower RPC to supply it. But in looking on other forums, I was told that RPCs do more damage to CNC equipment than almost anything. So I was really bummed out about that and was wondering what I was going to do when I found a post in another forum that said, these are super simple to run off single phase. So right now I've done some jumpers. I had to remove that one wire there and put a jumper in its place, and now this machine is totally running off a single phase, which is great. Ran 60 amps over here to it, and it has run fine so far. It has its own VFD in it already for the spindle motor, and moving that one jumper, moving everything off one L3 to L2 and L1 really was nice. I'm going to sit down here, maybe make the camera a little steadier. One of the neat things about this old machine is that it's a Windows-based operating system. Well, correction, it's a DOS-based operating system. So almost any old computer could be made to work in this system. In fact, this one has had an upgrade from its other motherboard, and right there is the main motherboard for the computer. It's hard to see in here, but there's its memory. The batteries, you know, you hear people talking about changing the batteries and losing your parameters and everything. Well, this one has never had its battery changed, and all the parameters were written to a text file. So every time it would boot up, they would just hit F1 to load the defaults in the BIOS. The machine would take off and start running, load its program, and go to town. This is the Bridgeport card. That's the main operating system, basically the machine control, and it runs on DOS. In fact, I think this is 6.2. The power supply is another plus. You know, that comes out of any of the old computers I've got laying around here. So when I get through troubleshooting everything, we'll straighten it up and put all the wire covers back on and make sure things are set up right. The one problem that I was told that was wrong with this computer was the A-axis, or the fourth axis drive card, was bad. And they had a problem, and so they took the fourth axis card out and moved it over to the X-axis, and the machine fired right back up and went back to work. So I knew one card was bad. You can still buy parts from these, but from only one company. They, when Bridgeport went out of business, some of the engineers there went and started, I think it's EMI, and they sell used parts for these things still. Of course, they are incredibly expensive. This board here is one of the drives. The A drive is the same card as the X and the Y. The Z card is a little different, so you can't interchange it. But this one was the bad one. I troubleshooted it and found out that this cap right here was in bad shape. I took it off the board and discovered that the pads were destroyed underneath it. So I repaired all the pads and resoldered it. The cap still checked out fine, so we put it back in there just as a test. I finally sourced some different caps for it, but if it's going to work, I'm just going to leave it alone. So this one mounts in the rack right in this spot right here, and then this is the one that was running for the X, and it'll mount here and go back to being the A-axis. So those are 4 drive cards for the 4 different axes. You got all kinds of little bob boards and auxiliary boards. So far, the only other problem I found electrically back here is on that motherboard right there, and I don't know if you can see them, but there are 4 little caps right there. You can see they kind of look dome shape. That means those are called vents on a cap, and that tells me that those caps will not be working very much longer, so I'm going to have to pull those out and replace it. Luckily, cap replacements pretty easy to do. Just gotta have the right tools. Let's go around this side now. So it was kind of wobbly. Sorry about the state of the shop. We've really had a lot of movement and changes going on in here. That's my Axelson, 1954 Axelson. Somebody had the audacity to paint it John Deere green and yellow. So as I sit here and make parts, I scrape the yellow off of all the controls while I'm waiting. Haven't got to these yet. Someday. We've been so busy. That's my Rockford planer right there. And this machine had to come through that little pathway. Right now we've got some plywood. We're building a kitchen cabinet job, and there's a couple cabinets we just put in here just to get out of the way of the main shop. Back over there is Andy from Austin's Monarch 10E that he brought to the last scraping class. He bought this and has been working on the scraping, and you know, it's kind of hard to do long distance. And then all this plywood here is for his new cabinets for his shop. So we had to move all of this out of the way. I ended up taking off the handles here for the controls for the planer, and then taking off the handles on the Brown and Sharp 13 tool grinder. And we had a 1/2 inch clearance after I did all that to get the machine in. And this side has got a another chip window. I think I'm going to get all new windows for it. This one's cracked and they're crazed, and you know, I understand they're going to get dirty and stuff, but you know, plexiglass is cheap. This is the other side of the column here. That line right there is the air hose going to the A-axis. And these are control manifolds. This one here controls a rotary vane actuator up on the head up there, and that changes gears. Well, I've got air leaking out of this manifold, so I think the seal is blown up there. And so I've tried 2 companies and nobody will call you back. I don't think they like messing with parts for that old stuff. This one's got 2 air filters with drains on it. You set one to 85 and one to 15, and then it's got an oil lubricator in the back right there. Got to have air going to it. At the other shop, they had a hose coming down here, and this just plugged in right here, so I think I'm going to do the same. Main power turn off for right now. And you can put a printer on here. Why, I have no idea. And miscellaneous functions. Down there is where the coolant pump plugs in. This machine sprays coolant, and it runs down into this trough right here. On top of that trough is some screens, so it'll keep the big chips in the machine. And there's another trough exactly like this on the other side of the machine. And it flows out and comes through here and then goes into this coolant tray, where there are 2 more screens and then a 110 volt motor that pumps it around. So when that gets nice and dirty, I like it because you can just take it out. A lot of the other machines I've seen, you're pretty stuck with trying to clean them in place. I think this will hold about 15 gallons of coolant, so that ought to be nice. Overall, the machine's in pretty good shape. Right now, I have a problem with it shifting into high gear. I'm going to spend some time probably taking apart the rotary vane actuator. And then there's another shot pin up there that's air controlled. And maybe that'll have to be worked over too. So get to learn how to do that. I don't know much about working on these old things. Luckily, I've got a good history of working on old computers. I even remember some old DOS commands, which are going to come in handy. I think that switch they added right there, I think that's for the stack. I do believe that's the most modern looking thing I've got in this place. Well, the old shop's changed a little bit because of this addition. To get enough money to buy this, there used to be in this spot a more jig bore. I found I just don't use it as much as I thought I would, and so it took up a lot of room. So it went in partial trade on this machine, and now they're using it over in the leather shop where they'll get a lot of use out of it. They've got some transmissions they need to bore. Right here used to sit a Brown & Sharp number 2 mill, universal horizontal mill. That went to a PM member up in Bryan, Texas, where he's going to have fun using that. And then over in the corner back there used to be the Boss 5. So all 3 of those machines went so that we at least have enough room to work on this. I can't put it up against a wall. It's old, and I know I'm going to be fixing things all the time, so I need some space to work. Well, that's it for today. When I have some more, I'll let you know.